The doctor's words echoed in my head like a death sentence. Gloria, you've tested positive for HIV. I was 22, fresh out of college, and suddenly my entire world collapsed. The sterile hospital room felt suffocating as I gripped the test results with trembling hands. Hey dear friends. If this story touches you, support us by subscribing and letting us know your location in the comments. Now let's continue this story together. My mind raced back to Jerry, my college boyfriend who'd disappeared without explanation 6 months earlier. The pieces clicked together with devastating clarity. I'd trusted him completely, never knowing he was hiding this secret that would forever alter my life. Driving home to my family's house that evening, I rehearsed how I'd tell them. These were the people who'd raised me, loved me, supported me through everything. Surely they'd stand by me now when I needed them most. Mama, Daddy, I need to tell you all something important, I said, gathering my parents and 3 siblings in our familiar living room where we'd shared countless family meetings. The silence that followed my announcement was deafening. My mother's face went pale, then twisted with something I'd never seen before. Disgust mixed with fear. My father's jaw clenched tight, his knuckles white as he gripped the armchair. How could you be so reckless? Mama finally whispered, her voice cutting through me like glass. I trusted someone I loved, I replied, tears streaming down my cheeks. Well, your poor choices have consequences, Daddy said coldly. We can't have you bringing that disease into this house with your little sister here. My heart shattered as I watched the people I'd loved most in the world look at me like I was already dead. The family that had taught me about unconditional love was about to teach me about conditional rejection. Pack your things. You need to be gone by morning. Daddy's words hit me like physical blows. 22 years of memories, of birthday parties in this kitchen, of Christmas mornings by that tree, of homework sessions at the dining table, all erased in a single sentence. My sister Jasmine, only 16, started crying. Daddy, she's still Gloria. She's still our family. Not anymore, he said firmly. I won't risk exposing this family to that disease. What would the neighbors think? What would the church say? I spent my last night in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by boxes and the ghosts of my former life. Every photo on my dresser felt like evidence of a girl who no longer existed. The stuffed animals from my childhood watched silently as I packed everything I owned into 3 suitcases. Mama appeared in my doorway at 2 a.m. and for a moment, I thought she'd changed her mind. Instead, she handed me $500. My life savings she'd been keeping safe for me. This should help you get started somewhere else, she said, unable to meet my eyes. And Gloria, don't come back. Don't call. Don't write. You're putting all of us at risk just by being here. The next morning, my older brother Jerome loaded my boxes into his truck without speaking. As we drove away from the only home I'd ever known, I watched the house grow smaller in the side mirror until it disappeared completely. Where should I drop you? Jerome asked, his first words of the day. The bus station, I whispered, my voice barely audible. He didn't even say goodbye when he dumped my belongings on the curb. I was truly alone. The women's shelter downtown became my first real lesson in survival. Surrounded by others who'd been cast out by life's cruel circumstances, I learned that rock bottom could be a foundation if you were strong enough to build on it. Sister Margaret, the shelter director, became my first ally. She connected me with HIV support groups and helped me understand that my diagnosis wasn't a death sentence anymore. It was a chronic condition I could manage with proper treatment and care. You're young, educated, and determined, she told me during one of our weekly talks. Don't let other people's ignorance define your future. I found work at a medical billing company, starting in data entry for $12 an hour. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was processing insurance claims for the same company that covered my family's health insurance. Every day I saw how the system worked, how claims were approved or denied, how policies were structured. My supervisor, Mrs. Houston, noticed my quick grasp of complex medical terminology and insurance procedures. Have you considered going back to school? She asked one afternoon. You have a natural understanding of this industry. That conversation planted a seed. I'd studied business in college but had no direction. Now I had purpose. I enrolled in evening classes for healthcare administration while working full-time, determined to understand every aspect of the insurance world that could have helped me, but didn't. My family's rejection had left a hole in my heart, but slowly I began filling it with knowledge, ambition, and an unshakable determination to never be powerless again. I started keeping a journal, documenting every slight, every lesson, every step forward. I had no idea then that I was building the foundation for the most elaborate form of justice imaginable. 3 years into my journey, I'd transformed from broken girl to formidable woman. My evening classes led to a bachelor's completion program, then a master's in healthcare management. Every promotion at work felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that my family had tried to kill. The insurance company, Guardian Health Solutions, became my second home. I learned every department, every policy, every loophole. My HIV status remained confidential, legally protected, but it motivated every decision I made. "Gloria, you've got something special," said Robert Callahan, the regional director, during my performance review. "I'm recommending you for the executive training program." My colleagues whispered about my rapid advancement, some attributing it to luck, others to favoritism. They didn't understand that when you've lost everything once, you work 3 times harder to ensure it never happens again. During training, I met Dr. Patricia Williams, a consultant who specialized in insurance fraud prevention. She became my mentor, teaching me the darker sides of the industry, how companies maximized profits by finding reasons to deny legitimate claims. "The secret," she explained over coffee one evening, "is understanding that insurance companies are businesses first, healthcare providers second. Every claim denied is money in their pocket." I absorbed every lesson, every strategy, every insight. Not for malicious purposes, but because I understood what it felt like to be on the other side, to need help and be turned away by people who were supposed to care. My personal life remained carefully compartmentalized. I dated occasionally but never seriously. Trust, once shattered so completely, doesn't heal easily. I had acquaintances, not friends. Colleagues, not confidants. The only family I claimed was my chosen family. Other HIV-positive individuals who'd built meaningful lives despite society's judgment. We were warriors, survivors, thrivers. But late at night, I still wondered about my blood family. Were they healthy? Happy? Did they ever think about the daughter and sister they'd discarded like yesterday's garbage? 7 years had passed since my exile when social media inadvertently reconnected me with my past. A mutual acquaintance's Facebook post showed my sister Jasmine at her engagement party, looking radiant in a white dress, surrounded by our family. I stared at the photos for hours, zooming in on faces that looked older but familiar. Mama had gray streaks in her hair now. Daddy looked smaller somehow. My brothers had wives and children I'd never meet. They looked happy, complete, like they'd never missed the daughter and sister they'd thrown away. That same week, a routine database audit at work revealed something that made my blood run cold. My family's insurance information appeared in our system. They were all covered by Guardian Health Solutions, the company where I now served as Assistant Vice President of Claims Review. Jerome had diabetes, developing complications that required expensive monthly treatments. Mama had been diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years earlier. Information I learned from her medical history, not from any family communication. Daddy had heart disease, requiring regular cardiology visits and expensive medications. Even my little sister Jasmine, now 23, had developed an autoimmune condition requiring costly biologic medications. The irony was staggering. The family who'd cast me out for having a manageable chronic condition now relied on expensive treatments for their own health issues. And I was in a position to see every detail of their medical struggles. But I was professional, ethical. Their claims were processed fairly according to policy guidelines. I didn't interfere, despite the bitter irony burning in my chest every time I saw their names cross my desk. I told myself I was better than them, more compassionate, more human. That noble stance lasted exactly 3 more years. Congratulations, Gloria. You're our new CEO. The board's announcement still felt surreal 3 weeks later as I sat in the executive office I'd dreamed of for years. At 32, I was the youngest CEO in Guardian Health Solutions history, and the first Black woman to lead the company. The promotion came after our previous CEO retired amid scandal. The board needed someone with unimpeachable ethics, someone who understood both the business and human sides of healthcare. My reputation for fairness and innovation made me the unanimous choice. My first board meeting was scheduled for Monday. The executive team briefed me on quarterly goals, regulatory challenges, and cost-cutting initiatives. Everything seemed routine until my assistant brought me a stack of files requiring CEO-level review. These are unusual cases, she explained. Claims that exceeded normal approval thresholds or had multiple appeal denials. They need your personal attention. I opened the first file and nearly dropped it. Jerome Carlson, my brother. His diabetes complications had worsened significantly. He needed a specialized insulin pump system costing $15,000, plus ongoing supplies that would run $800 monthly. His previous insurance had covered basic treatments, but this advanced therapy exceeded standard coverage limits. The second file was Mama, Dorothy Carlson. Her breast cancer had returned, more aggressive than before. She needed a cutting-edge immunotherapy treatment costing $40,000 per month. The therapy wasn't considered standard of care yet, making it experimental and typically non-covered. File 3, Daddy Robert Carlson. His heart condition required a specialized pacemaker defibrillator device costing $75,000, plus surgical implantation fees. His current device was failing, but the replacement was considered upgraded technology beyond basic coverage. File 4, Jasmine Carlson. Her autoimmune condition wasn't responding to standard treatments. She needed biologic medications costing $5,000 monthly, plus regular infusion center visits. Her doctors were requesting approval for experimental combination therapies. 10 years of pain crystallized into this moment. The family who'd abandoned me in my hour of need now needed expensive medical care that I, personally, had the power to approve or deny. I stared at those files for 3 days before making any decisions. The irony was so perfect it felt like divine intervention. The girl they'd thrown away had become the woman who controlled their medical futures. My HIV treatment cost $3,200 monthly, covered completely by my executive insurance plan. The medication that kept me healthy and undetectable was never questioned, never denied. I had the best care money could buy, while they struggled with insurance approvals for their own life-saving treatments. Dr. Patricia Williams, now my board advisor, noticed my distraction during our weekly meeting. "You seem troubled," she observed. "Having second thoughts about the position? What would you do?" I asked carefully, "if you had the power to deny claims for people who had wronged you deeply?" She leaned back, studying my face. "That's a dangerous question, Gloria. The moment we make healthcare decisions based on personal feelings rather than medical necessity and policy guidelines, we become the villains in someone else's story." Her words haunted me, but they couldn't erase 10 years of abandonment, rejection, and forced solitude. These people had literally chosen to let me die rather than offer support. They'd prioritized their reputation over my life. Now they needed expensive treatments to live, and I held their fate in my hands. I called an emergency meeting with my claims review team. "I want to personally review all high-dollar claims this quarter," I announced. "We need to ensure we're following company guidelines precisely." My staff nodded, impressed by my hands-on leadership approach. They had no idea I was looking for one specific family's cases. That evening, I called my therapist, a luxury I'd afforded myself once I could pay for quality mental health care. "I'm facing a situation that tests everything I believe about forgiveness and justice," I told her. "What does your heart tell you?" she asked. "My heart tells me they deserve to feel abandoned and powerless just like they made me feel." "And what does your conscience tell you?" I was silent for a long moment. "My conscience tells me I'm better than they are." The first denial letter went out on a Tuesday morning. Jerome's insulin pump request. Denied, experimental treatment not covered under standard policy guidelines. I crafted the language myself, using the same cold, bureaucratic tone I'd seen in thousands of denial letters. No warmth, no empathy, just policy citations and form paragraphs. Mama's immunotherapy. Denied treatment considered investigational, not proven effective for patient's specific cancer stage. Daddy's pacemaker upgrade. Denied current device functional, replacement not medically necessary according to standard protocols. Jasmine's biologic medications. Denied patient has not exhausted all standard treatment options before requesting experimental therapies. Each denial was technically legitimate according to our strictest policy interpretations. I wasn't breaking any laws or violating clear medical necessity. I was simply applying the same ruthless efficiency to their cases that insurance companies applied to thousands of other patients daily. The difference was that I knew exactly who was suffering. 2 weeks later, my assistant informed me that all 4 patients had filed appeals, requesting seal-level review of their denials. Should I schedule phone conferences with the patients? She asked. No, I replied calmly. I'll review the files personally and respond in writing. That weekend, I sat in my penthouse apartment, paid for by the success I'd built from the ashes of their rejection, and composed appeal responses. Each one upheld the original denial with additional documentation requirements that would delay treatment for months. I imagined Jerome struggling with uncontrolled diabetes, his vision failing, his kidneys suffering. I pictured Mama, weakening as cancer spread through her body, unable to access treatments that could save her life. Daddy's heart, growing weaker each day without proper intervention. Jasmine, young and scared, watching her body attack itself while expensive medications sat just out of reach. 10 years ago, they'd made a choice about my health and my life. Now I was making choices about theirs. The phone call came on a Thursday afternoon in March. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Gloria. The voice was tentative, desperate. It's Jasmine. I nearly hung up immediately. Instead, I found myself frozen, listening to the sister who hadn't spoken to me in a decade. I know we don't have the right to ask, she began, her voice breaking. But Mama's dying. The cancer is spreading so fast, and insurance won't approve the treatment that could help her. Jerome's in the hospital, his blood sugar crashed and he went into a coma. Daddy had a heart attack last week. Silence stretched between us like a chasm. I'm sick too, she continued. Some autoimmune thing the doctors can't figure out. I can barely get out of bed most days. We're losing our house because of medical bills. Everything's falling apart. I could hear her crying now, the same little sister who used to braid my hair and steal my clothes. We were wrong, she whispered. We were so wrong about everything. About you. About HIV. We let fear and ignorance destroy our family. I've regretted it every single day for 10 years. My hand trembled as I held the phone. This was the apology I'd dreamed of hearing. The acknowledgement of their cruel mistake. But it came wrapped in desperation and need. Why are you calling me? I asked quietly. Because you work in insurance now. Someone told me you might know people who could help, who could explain why everything keeps getting denied. We don't understand the medical language in these letters. We don't know how to fight this system. She had no idea. None of them knew that their little sister, the one they'd thrown away like garbage, now controlled their medical fates completely. I'll see what I can do, I said, then hung up before she could respond. I hired a private investigator to update me on my family's current situation. The report painted a picture of complete medical and financial devastation. Jerome's diabetes complications had cost him his job and his marriage. He was living with Mama and Daddy, unable to work, slowly going blind from uncontrolled blood sugar. Without the insulin pump system, doctors gave him 2 years before kidney failure. Mama's cancer had progressed to stage 4. The experimental immunotherapy I'd denied was now her only option for survival. Every day of delay meant the treatment became less effective. Her oncologist had given her 6 months without intervention. Daddy's heart attack had been massive. His current pacemaker was outdated technology, failing to prevent dangerous arrhythmias. He'd collapsed twice in the past month. The device upgrade I'd denied would stabilize his condition, but without it, his cardiologist predicted sudden death within the year. Jasmine's autoimmune condition, similar to lupus, was attacking her organs. The biologic medications I'd denied would halt the progression, but the disease was already affecting her kidneys and heart. At 23, she was facing permanent disability or death. They'd mortgaged their home 3 times to pay for medical treatments. Daddy had sold his construction business. They'd liquidated savings, retirement accounts, everything. The medical bills exceeded $400,000, with more accumulating daily. The investigator also discovered something that shattered my remaining resolve. They'd kept my bedroom exactly as I'd left it 10 years ago. The family never speaks about the missing daughter, his report noted, but neighbors say the parents have become reclusive, particularly around holidays. The mother was observed placing flowers on an empty place setting during family gatherings. I stared at that detail for hours. They'd kept my place at their table even while denying my existence to friends and neighbors. That evening, I drove to my old neighborhood for the first time in a decade. Parking across the street, I watched my family's house, smaller and shabbier than I remembered. Paint peeling, yard overgrown, the front porch where I'd learned to ride a bike now sagging with neglect. A light was on in my old bedroom window. I requested all 4 family members' complete medical files for a comprehensive CO review. What I found in their detailed histories broke something inside me that I didn't know still existed. 3 months after my diagnosis, Jerome had gotten tested for HIV. Negative. But he'd never told anyone in the family, not even his wife, about the test. The medical notes included a counselor's observation. Patient expressed extreme guilt about his sister's diagnosis and family's reaction. Recommends family counseling, but patient refuses. Mama's cancer had been caught early initially. Stage 1, highly treatable. But she delayed treatment for 8 months, telling her doctors she didn't deserve to be saved when her daughter was dying alone. By the time she sought treatment, it had progressed to stage 2, requiring more aggressive therapy. Daddy's heart problems started 6 months after my exile. His cardiologist's notes mentioned significant stress and guilt contributing to hypertension and cardiac episodes. Patient reports insomnia related to family trauma. Strongly recommends counseling. Most devastating was Jasmine's file. Her autoimmune condition had symptoms dating back 9 years, starting just 1 year after I left. Her rheumatologist had noted multiple times that extreme stress could trigger autoimmune responses, especially in young people who'd experienced family trauma. They'd all been slowly dying from guilt and regret, their bodies manifesting the emotional poison they'd swallowed when they chose fear over love. That night, I sat in my corner office, surrounded by the success they'd forced me to build alone, and realized I'd become everything I'd once hated. I'd used my power to punish suffering people regardless of the reasons behind their pain. Dr. Williams found me there the next morning, still staring at those medical files. "You look like someone who's seen their own soul," she said gently. "I have," I whispered. "And it's uglier than I thought possible." He sat across from my desk, waiting. "My family abandoned me when I was diagnosed with HIV 10 years ago," I said finally. "These denied claims, they're my family members. I've been using my position to punish them for destroying my life." Patricia didn't look shocked. She looked sad. "And now?" she asked. "Now I don't know who I am anymore." I approved all 4 claims that morning. Emergency authorizations, expedited processing, full coverage with retroactive approval for delayed care. I personally called each specialist to ensure immediate treatment scheduling. But I knew approval wasn't enough. The damage from delayed treatment might be irreversible. Jerome's eyesight was permanently compromised. Mama's cancer had spread during the months I'd stalled her care. Daddy's heart had sustained damage from repeated episodes. Jasmine's organs showed scarring that might never heal. My revenge had cost them more than money. It had cost them health, time, and potentially their lives. I resigned my position that afternoon, effective immediately. In my resignation letter to the board, I cited personal conflicts of interest that compromise my ability to make objective decisions. I recommended Patricia Williams as my replacement, knowing she'd lead with the integrity I'd abandoned. The next morning, I drove to my family's house and knocked on the door for the first time in 10 years. Mama answered, and the shock on her face was absolute. She'd aged 20 years in 10, her body ravaged by cancer and grief. But her eyes, the same eyes I remembered from childhood, filled with tears. "Gloria," she whispered. "I'm the CEO who approved your medical treatments," I said quietly. "I'm also the one who denied them initially." She staggered backward, one hand on her chest. "I wanted you to suffer like you made me suffer," I continued. "I wanted you to feel abandoned and helpless. I used my power to hurt you, and I'm not sure I can ever forgive myself for that." Daddy appeared behind her, leaning heavily on a walker, his face gaunt but his eyes sharp. Jerome emerged from the kitchen, moving slowly with a white cane. Jasmine came down the stairs, thin and pale but alive. "My family. Broken, hurting but alive. We destroyed our daughter," Daddy said, his voice cracked with age and regret. "We were cowards who chose fear over love, and we've paid for it every day since." We sat in that familiar living room where they'd once cast me out, but the conversation was unlike anything we'd ever had. 10 years of pain, regret, and consequences lay between us like a minefield. "I kept your room exactly the same," Mama said through tears. Every night I'd set your place at dinner, hoping somehow you'd walk through that door. The guilt nearly killed me before the cancer ever could. Jerome spoke haltingly, his vision lost but his voice strong. I got tested after you left. I knew I could have been in your position if my choices had been different. We threw away the best person in our family because we were ignorant and scared. Jasmine, now a shadow of the vibrant teenager I'd left behind, took my hand with fingers that shook from medication and weakness. I've spent 9 years sick and I finally understand what you went through. Being abandoned by your body is terrible, but being abandoned by family is worse. Daddy, his heart literally broken from a decade of guilt, looked at me with eyes full of regret. I failed as a father. I let fear make me cruel to my own child. I threw away my daughter to protect an image that meant nothing. Their apologies were genuine, their regret profound. But medical treatments I'd delayed meant Jerome would never see his children grow up. Mama's cancer might have been curable if I hadn't stalled her care. Daddy's heart damage was permanent. Jasmine's organs bore scars from delayed treatment. My revenge had been complete, and it had made me a monster. I forgive you, I told them, meaning it despite everything. But I need you to know that my delays might have cost you more than we can ever know. I became exactly what I accused you of being, someone who abandoned family when they needed help most. We cried together in that living room, 10 years of pain finally finding release. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Mama passed away 4 months later. The treatment I'd delayed had come too late. Daddy died in his sleep 6 months after that, his damaged heart finally giving out. I moved back home to care for Jerome and Jasmine, using my insurance industry knowledge to help other families navigate the system I'd once weaponized against my own. We found peace in service, in love, in the family we rebuilt from ruins. But late at night I still carry the weight of those denied claims, those delayed treatments, those months when I chose revenge over compassion. Some victories cost more than losses ever could.